One on
finance.
Yeah, so again, I think there is a responsibility for the entrepreneur as well as the responsibility of government around the issue of access to finance. Number one, at least from an entrepreneur perspective, we have this trend in Kenya where we see everyone wants to venture into the business alone. Kila mtu anataka kuomoka peke yake. But if you look at best practice from Asia, even the Asian community in Kenya, the Somali community in Kenya, there's a lot of working together so that we are able to pool resources for us to be able to do business. But if you look at the typical average Kenyan, and of course this is supported by data, we have over 90% of businesses being micro. So these are, a small business that is doing turnovers of less than 500,000 annually with less than 10 people within the organization. Probably you'll find that the founder is one. So I think that culture has to change so that from tonight, I think probably my advice would be for you to be able to sit down with your colleagues, mix the 10 shillings, 10 shillings, 10 shillings. If you're 30 of you, of course, that would mean that you're able to do a business that...
3,000 Bob used.
Or 3,000 that is here.
Question, so you're saying a gentleman like this who's in the food and beverage industry can collaborate with a lady such as, the farmer. You do farming. No, but who's doing farming? It was him. You're the one. You're the farmer. Please get together.
What we saw even, what we've seen in Nyamakima as an example, where people were buying electronics from China before the Chinese came here, is all of us would pool resources to go bring a container. Okay, so it's not one person who was bringing a container, but it was a number of us putting 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. We enjoy the economies of scale in terms of being able to purchase. So I think that's a practice that also as entrepreneurs we need to be able to adopt so that we're not just operating as a solo person, but pooling resources. And we've seen that even work successfully in the SACCO movement, whether it's farmers, etc. So there's a lot of pooling of resources, which means that we're able to access or able to do business that we would otherwise have not have done. That's number one. Number two is, in business school, they tell you that the cheapest source of finance is profit. The question that probably I would pose to you, entrepreneurs, even myself, is as much as we are saying government is bad, government is doing stuff, the question is there are still things that are working in government. If you look at the affirmative action funds, how many of us have visited Keproba or Brand Kenya, where they've been able to map out different markets across the globe? Have you been able to access and have you gone to those offices and they have refused to give you service? So I think there's a responsibility from an entrepreneur perspective that, of course, you have to do that, but also you also have to do research. As Eunice is saying, there has to be a personal initiative for you to be able to do research, to go into businesses that are profitable. There are businesses that are naturally you will fail because they have very little profit margin. So sometimes we need also as entrepreneurs to take a bit of time, get people, not professional mentors who get money for no reason.
What did you call them? Fraudulent mentors? Bogus mentors.
Bogus mentors, but just talk to people who are in business, who can be able to guide you and invest in areas that can quickly give you profits without the need to borrow. That's number one. Number two, at least from a government perspective, of course we say there are initiatives that have worked. The Movable Property Securities Act, Credit Guarantee Scheme, affirmative action to some degree have worked. But also, of course we see government also playing a big role in terms of borrowing locally. So what basically means, because banks are risk averse, they will always give the financing that they have to government. So as long as government is a major player within the financial space, then it means that
there's no money.
And that's why, as he says, during Kibaki time, because the government was not borrowing locally, banks were forced to look for entrepreneurs and ideas for them to give loans. But what we are seeing currently is a lot of government playing a big part in terms of getting debt locally. I think also government has failed in terms of pending bills. So when an entrepreneur is able to give a service to a county or to a national ministry, if they're not paid on time, of course that means that their business is affected. So like I said, I think it's a question of both government as well as entrepreneur in terms of the issue of finance. And it's not a question of government failing alone. It's also, as entrepreneurs, we also have a responsibility to ensure that we are creative as much as possible for us to be able to really push our business.
All right, interesting points.
I believe whatever the discussion we are doing here, we are doing a discussion of a certain level of business elite. That is my feeling. Because I come from Gikomba, somebody is selling, is hawking groundnuts, banana, a bunch of banana. How are we touching on this entrepreneur? He's an entrepreneur. How are we touching on
the principles that he's talking about? Do they apply?
They don't apply completely.
Victor, is that true? Do you think?
Like I said, all of us, everyone has an opportunity to do business. You can decide today to do groundnuts. You can decide to do whichever decision you make. That is the decision that you make yourself. But we've seen, for example, the lady who's behind there was saying, probably and others, who have learned to do makeup just by just looking at YouTube. So you don't need to go to get a university degree for you to do research, to do an alternative business that can give you a better income. So if you decide you're going to do groundnuts, that's your personal choice.
All right.
But it does not mean that you don't have resources or tools for you to be able to do an alternative business.